Soil computers now have primary control of critical vehicle functions.
Still not finished the ogre set yet.
Testing. Haha, okay, yes, fantastic. Now it is working. Plugging in the mic definitely helps with making sure that the audio feed is working. Good morning. It is 9:03 on Monday. Happy Veterans Day for those who observe in the United States, and happy Monday for everyone else. I'm Benry Paints. I'm here to do some painting, small-time miniature painter who just kind of streams for the heck of it, for the funsies. Today, I'm going to be working on a little goblin. So, one of the users who watches me pretty regularly, Shiny Mew Paints, really likes these Twin Goddess miniatures, and I can see why. They're adorable, they're well sculpted, and they just have a really cool aesthetic to them. And so today, they asked for some critiques on one of their recently finished projects, and I figured, hey, if they want a demonstration of how I paint the way I do, that I'd go ahead and print out one and paint it, just as an example. Now, I will say, these models are definitely a lot cheekier than I normally paint, so be prepared for that. But, and they're also really tiny. I was kind of stunned to see how small this goblin actually was. But yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and try and paint this the way I do, so that way there's some kind of video available if they ever want to, try some new techniques. Because there's nothing wrong with their video. There's nothing wrong with their paint scheme. Their goblins look fantastic. But they asked for some general pointers and whatnot, so I'll give them to the best of my ability. And if they like what I'm doing, then cool, fantastic. They can keep they can adapt some of that to their own painting style. And if they think what I'm doing isn't their vibe, then that's also okay. But at the very least, I can get some fun painting in, and I can paint a neat little miniature. So let's go ahead and switch over from the starting soon and this wonderful starting soon image from Dark Volt and put on the main camera, which is dark for some reason. I think it's because I messed up my lighting. But so this is what we're working with today. This is a Twin Goddess Miniatures Goblin, and unfortunately it's the only one that was free because I don't exactly have a lot of money to spend on him. This thing is incredibly well sculpted, and just to give you an idea of how tiny it is, this is my thumb, and I have medium-sized hands by American sizing standards because I am not a tall man myself. But yeah, this is an incredibly tiny miniature. To give another example, here is a Space Marine Gravis Aggressor. And they're a little bigger than regular Space Marines, but just as an idea, this is how much bigger or how much smaller this Goblin is compared to a typical Space Marine. So I'm going to go ahead and give this a shot. I'm going to go ahead and try and paint this. I'm actually really interested in seeing how detailed I can get it given how small it is. But one of the things that should actually help out a lot with this is the fact that it's so small that I don't exactly need to have the smoothest blends, because the size of it will actually save a lot of time with that. So hopefully I do an okay job. Hopefully they enjoy the tutorial. Hey Dark Volt, good morning. Well, good evening for you, I guess. But yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and paint this tiny little Goblin. This thing is very small. I did not realize how small they were when Shiny Mew Paints was posting them. But my goodness, it is very tiny. And so I'm going to do my best to paint it in hopefully a way that will help them as they continue on their painting journey. How have you been? I saw the just incredible amount of work that you've done over the last week at Community Day, or the last month, my apologies. And yeah, you are a machine. I don't really know how else to put it. You have such an incredible output, and it impresses the hell out of me every time. So kudos to you for being able to do so much, and it all looks so awesome. I also kind of agree with India. I do like your Kingdom Hearts characters a lot more than you have a lot of time being bored otherwise. That's absolutely fair. That's completely fair. I remember when I was unemployed, I definitely had a lot more free time than I do now, and it led to me my output increasing tremendously. So one of the first things I'm going to do is I'm going to add some airbrush flow improver to the palette, simply because with this mini being so small, I can't afford to have chunky paints, and the flow improver will help break it up while also keeping it from drying out. So hopefully this will help a little bit with actually adding on paint to this incredibly tiny little lass. That's the word I'm looking for. So how have you been? You know, the election notwithstanding, I've been doing pretty okay. I hope you have as well. But yeah, that was a huge thing last week that really messed up a lot of plans moving forward and a lot of things. And hopefully, you know, everyone will be okay. And hopefully, we as a people, we as a country are able to kind of move on with minimal harm. But who knows? Who knows? That being said, though, I've never painted a mini. Actually, I take that back. I've painted one mini that had this much kind of skin showing off, and I did not do a good job with it because it was back when I was first learning how to do blending. That is, oh, that's a stocking. That's not part of their leg. And I've improved tremendously since then, and I think that one miniature had a lot to do with it. Not American, so no election for me, but I see people distressing, I sympathize. Yeah, it went very badly for a lot of reasons, and unfortunately, it just feels like everyone else is really starting to learn what privilege is in weird ways, and we're also starting to see a lot of, I don't want to say it's a majority, simply because that's not even on camera, simply because you know, the internet is never a majority, but there are enough people who feel empowered enough to say some pretty awful things, and it just shows you how polarized we as a country have become with our politics, and how much fear-mongering has been allowed to fester. And that really upsets me as a former teacher of both politics and like journalism. But let's not talk about that. Just know that I'm very sad and very worried about my future here. I'm also in a place of incredible privilege because I'm a homeowner and a legal citizen due to my adoption. In the meantime, I guess I'm going to talk about trying very daintily to paint the shadow color for this goblin's thigh skin. And just how difficult, I don't want to say difficult, but just how challenging this is going to be because it is so tiny. And how this is just an incredible example of why having a good brush with a very fine tip is super important. Because I can't imagine trying to paint the fine details on this mini with a brush that has a less than near perfect or perfect point. You know what I mean? Like I said, the camera is doing a tremendous job, actually, of magnifying it and showing off all the details, but I don't have a magnifier, and I don't own those glasses, and this is just a very, very, very tiny mini. I will say I am impressed at the anatomy of the mini, because it has a lot of things that normally aren't put on female-coded minis, because they can make them look quote-unquote less attractive. Like this little hip fold. Yeah, you work around the fray and touch with the mistakes, exactly. But that little hip fold right there where the hip skin kind of bunches up against the rib skin, I think that's super neat that they added that there, because especially with her pose, a lot of modelers I've seen and a lot of artists I've seen don't bother with that kind of stuff because they don't want to show that level of I don't want to call it fat on a woman's body, but that's kind of what it is. And I'm happy that as a culture, we've become a lot more body positive in how we represent the human body in both male and female presenting characters. And this is actually encouraging me to want to paint more of their sculpts just at a bigger size, because this is pretty intense for me right now. I don't know, have you painted any of their sculpts? Have you done any of their, any of the stuff that they've got? I will say, on another note, this is actually the first day in a couple days where my sinuses haven't absolutely murdered me, and I feel pretty okay. Just kind of neat. I actually had to miss like a mandatory staff meeting at Geek Squad because I just couldn't stop coughing and sneezing, and I couldn't see straight. No chance yet you would need to order a print. That is fair. And if I recall properly, ordering prints tends to be relatively expensive because they want to be able to pay for like operating costs and material and whatnot. And generally, at least when I send them out, I generally just kind of ask for the cost of shipping and potentially a little bit for the material. Okay, now she's purple. But yeah, so what have you been up to? I saw that you went back and kind of reimagined a lot of your Kingdom Hearts OCs, and I thought that was pretty neat. They do inspire you to try and sculpt a bit more in Blender. That is another thing, yeah. I actually, because of, I showed it off in chat, but because of the wonderful art you've done of my little dude, I mentioned that I wanted to go back into Blender and make that head and put it on a heavy intercessor body. So you actually kind of encouraged me to go back into Blender, and unfortunately I have to start from ground zero again because they've changed it so much and I've forgotten so much about it. So, I went back into Blender and I looked at some new tutorials. I think it was some of the ones that you posted. And, I made that doofy little STL that I went ahead and actually just now, before I started this, I went ahead and put in the printer alongside some other stuff. So very soon, Ben Repaints his head will exist in physical form. And once I get some more resin, I'm going to print out some more heavy intercessor bodies, and we'll see just how silly that looks. Now, I will say this purple does look really good just as a skin tone. Especially on like the black base, or the black, not base coat, prime coat. It does definitely pop really nicely. But yeah, I'm very interested in getting back into Blender again and just kind of looking at as many tutorials as possible on how to do some character stuff and potentially learning how to rig and animate and see how well or how successful I can be with that. And maybe that will help give me a little more encouragement to actually try and make the overlay I've been saying I've wanted to make for like a year. Especially now that my role at my job is kind of leveled out and I know exactly what I'm doing every day. Okay, add a little bit more purple in there, because that purple is going to be the deep shadow under her, under that tuft of hair she's got coming for. Okay. You did some Kingdom Hearts OC reinterpretations that led you to think about what story they could be again. So I do what I usually do in doodle designs and key scenes. Yeah, that sounds like a lot of fun. And once you have all the key scenes, that means you're also going to start having key moments that you can kind of build to and build away from, if you ever decide to turn that into more than just you know, doodles and drawings and whatnot. So that's pretty cool, and I hope that turns out well for you. I hope you're able to really expand on that universe, because that's like the best part of being in a fandom is starting to come up with your own ideas and being inspired, right? Oh my goodness, she's very purple. So we're going to go ahead and mix in some Vallejo flat green with this, because I still don't have my my Pro Acro colors, but I'm hoping for them soon. I'm going to mix some of that in with the royal purple that I am using. We're going to use that again to try and start building up towards a mid-tone from the shadow parts of what would be this goblin's skin, right? And right now it's going to kind of look gross because those two colors don't really blend well together. They make kind of a sickly olive green almost, and it really flattens out the color. But it is going to provide a nice transition to a much brighter, more vibrant green, working as kind of like the shadow color. So we're just going to keep working on that. This goblin got almost as much cake as a Space Marine Reaver from Space Marine 2. Good lord. I will say something that has been kind of weird is on Twitter, the amount of hostile bots has gone down tremendously. And I don't know if I've just started to disengage from that because it's annoyed the shit out of me and I don't have the energy to, or if it's legitimately a thing, but I'm seeing a whole lot less ranting and raving about like gamer controversies, when for a while that's all that would populate my damn timeline. And I do know that part of that is algorithm based, and so shame on me for engaging, but it was also that a lot of the content creators I was paying attention to because of Warhammer and whatnot were talking about it and were getting pushback for it. So I don't know if that drama is actually truly done, or if the algorithm just realigned post-election. Yes, some lists like deciding what cameo worlds to visit, what characters will be part of the group, and what is the main theme on why the player is going through the section of the story. Yeah, that's all important stuff. You're thinking about the good stuff there, because it's gonna drive forward the meaning of everything else in the story, I would assume. I'm no storyteller, so all I can do is think about how I might approach it and see how much better a job you're doing at it. Okay. Goblin thighs, Goblina thighs are done, I guess. Could be algorithm, it could be that there's a smaller pool to algorithmize from. Yeah, I do know that there's apparently being a mass exodus over to Blue Sky. And I've been on Blue Sky for a while because my wife got onto it first, way back when it was first becoming a thing. And so I got real lucky and got a friend code, or a reference code or whatever. But it does seem like Blue Sky is starting to gain popularity, which kudos to them. And it also seems like people are just starting to be like, yeah, this place is done. I'm done. I'm moving over. Follow me there if you'd like. I do wonder how long its lifespan is going to be before something happens to it and it ends up not being a whole lot better than what Twitter has become. But I also don't want to think about that too much because every product, everything has a shelf span. You know what I mean? And if all you're thinking about is, I wonder when it's going to be bad, then you're just kind of setting yourself up for disappointment. It's like, enjoy it while you can. Let's try and get those shoulder blades. And again, this mini is so freaking tiny. I'm trying my best. Glad for the surge, hope it doesn't turn into... Exactly, right? I think, unless it gets bought out, which isn't likely, because I'm pretty sure it's a small private company, or at least it isn't likely for a long time, their moderation crew is going to continue to keep the place as inviting and open as possible. Yeah. This green that I'm using is definitely a whole different color than what I was expecting. But it is definitely also shading her up to green. You're getting tired of migrating to new places you just want to sell? Well, I mean, yeah, that is true, but unfortunately I think it's just the nature of social media. And of everything, because nothing ever stays the same. And everything's always changing, either for better or for worse. And, you know, it sucks to think about it that way because it sounds so defeatist, but I was actually just talking about this with my partner. There are 2 malls in the city that we live in, and one of them used to be the place to go back in the 1980s. And it had like a French Quarter, it had water features, it was just, everyone wanted to be there. And, around the early 2000s, it just kind of freaking died. And part of the reason it died is because new ownership didn't want kids with skateboards and whatnot hanging around there. And just that, you know, the rise of online shopping just kind of made it a non-viable location. And so it's actually featured on a website called deadmalls.com. I think it's deadmalls.com. But the other one, for a while, was popping off because they did want kids to be there, and they did want, you know, parents to shop there. So it became the new hotness, and it was still pretty big when I first moved down here. But then the pandemic hit, and it really helped people learn to accept and normalize online shopping. And ever since then, that mall has started to die. But like, these are places that have been an institution for a lot of people's lifetimes. And now they gotta figure out what they're gonna do with that. Though I will admit, the slow decline of third spaces is really starting to alarm me, because it's like, where are people supposed to go? Yeah, new management sabotaged it. The other mall, being more modern and more recent, sabotaged it. Property values sabotaged it because it became increasingly expensive to rent there because of increasing property values. It was a whole thing. Between the online boom and, you know, the decline of the brick and mortar store, it's just become a problem. And it's actually kind of funny because, like, at Geek Squad, one of the big things that we try and do is provide a service for people that they can't get online. You know what I mean? Because everyone hates troubleshooting technology over the phone. It's just a pretty constant thing. Especially because most companies have outsourced their troubleshooting to other countries with employees that will definitely speak with an accent because they've learned a whole ass other language on top of their own one. And unfortunately, if people are struggling with technology, the last thing they want to do is try and parse through an accent they've probably never heard before on top of it. And that's unfortunate because, you know, that means they're denying themselves somehow some help and some knowledge. But some people just don't have that mental flexibility. And so a place like Geek Squad gives them a person-to-person consultant at like no prohibitive fee that allows them to figure out what's going wrong with their computer or what's going wrong with their phone. And in some ways that's awesome, and it's one of the reasons why I want a place like Geek Squad to thrive. But in others, it's also like, this is what we're trying to use to keep places like Best Buy alive. And it's like, wow, retail has gone places. I guess is how I'll end that. And it's made me wonder, like, what's going to happen to these malls? Because the idea of them just laying empty and barren is really depressing, given how much time and money and labor has been put into making them exist. So, like, what are they going to do with these huge building spaces once it's no longer profitable to make them retail space? And my big hope is that they go back to creating third spaces for people. You know what I mean? So while I may not be able to go to the mall to pick up, you know, new shoes or the newest CD, because no one does that anymore, I could still go to the mall to work kind of like a park where I can just kind of sit and hang out and read or whatever. And it just become this place for people to go to get out of the house. And if I had some money to invest, I'd try and make it into that. But unfortunately, I'm poor, so that's not going to happen. But the idea of turning malls into a third space, which we are sorely missing nowadays because every other third space is closed down, just seems like the right idea for me. Maybe like an indoor farmers market that people can gather. Exactly. That's what I'm thinking. Just a place for people to socialize and interact without having the compulsion to need to buy things. But then it becomes like, okay, how do you pay for overhead? How do you pay for employees and whatnot? And so I don't know. There's no easy answer. Okay, so I've moved on to the Vallejo Flat Green. And this is where, at least for me, the lighting and the highlighting is going to become a problem because I'm not super great at light placement. But the goal here is to try and get her other butt cheek. Phrases I never thought I'd say on stream. Is to try and create some volumetric highlighting so that when you look at the model, you can see that there's light kind of coming from the top and hitting on the right spots to really drive home a level of depth in the skin and in what's eventually going to be the clothing. Hey, Toby Kofi, how's it going? It's been a while since I've seen you on stream. I hope things are going well for you. I'm painting this Gabo because another user in the Discord was curious about some pointers and tips. So between rambling about the state of retail and malls and just kind of honestly waking up because I'm still very tired. I'm trying to also provide some running commentary on how I'm painting this lovely little lady, so that hopefully this will work as a half-decent tutorial for anyone interested in painting these tiny little goblin ladies. Hopefully I'm still on camera. You got anemia and you usually stream at like 3 AM? That is true. One thing that may help with the sighting light placement is to hold the model to a lamp and see where the highlights and shadows fall. That is true, and to some extent I'm doing that passively. Like when I first picked her up, I held her like this, and every now and then you might see me do that again. And that's because I am kind of looking at, okay, where am I seeing the light hit it the brightest? I'm sorry to hear that you're anemic. That really stinks. I've known some people with anemia, and I know that plays hell with your general energy levels. And yeah, unfortunately, because of my work schedule, I can't really stream in the mornings anymore. So I am streaming at like 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And I know for a lot of you guys, that means it's like at the crack, or like in the dead of the evening, 0 dark 30, whatever you want to call it. So I'm sorry about that. But hopefully, at the very least, you're getting a good night's sleep while I'm rambling incoherently. It's a solvable problem, but yeah, usually you're sleeping 14 hours a day. Gosh, the dream. I know not for you, it's not the dream, but I have not slept more than, and this isn't a bad thing because it's still good sleep. I have not slept more than 7 hours in almost a decade, unless I'm very ill. I don't know. I forgot to turn off that Ko-fi chatter. I'm not begging for money, I swear. I just completely forgot that Ko-fi bot was on, and I don't know how to turn it off. So I need to go into settings after stream and figure that out. Yeah, imagine sleeping 14 hours a day and being too tired to do anything. That's the worst part. And I dated someone that was like that, and I don't know if it was because they were anemic or just clinically depressed. And I'm not trying to make light of it either way. But it really sucked because I met them in high school, and that's when we started dating. And for a while, we were both just on cloud 9 because of that honeymoon phase when you start dating someone. And then after a while, they just became listless and unable to do anything. And so normally, they would ride home with me on the bus after school, and we would hang out and watch movies and have a good old time. But as we continued dating, and I guess as they got a little older, because we were both in, I think, sophomores in high school, so neither of us were driving yet, they just became increasingly listless, and all they wanted to do was sleep. And emotionally, I wasn't in a place of maturity where I could work with that and understand it and process it. So that ended up contributing to why we stopped dating. But I just, looking back on it, being older and more knowledgeable, I just feel real bad for them. The weather changed very abruptly to near freezing, and bodies have no time to adjust yet, so you're sleeping like 8 to 9 hours instead of the usual 4 to 6. That's gotta feel weird. Because you kind of get into a rhythm of like, this is what I'm doing during the day. And when you spend more than double the amount of time sleeping that you used to, it's like, wow, I have a whole lot less time during the day. And that's kind of what happens to me the few times I do get to sleep in, or I have gotten to sleep in, is it just feels like I've lost the day. We've been having a lot of weather fluctuations too. It's gone from almost spring and summer weather back down to winter weather very rapidly. And it's A, messing with my allergies, and B, messing with my energy levels. And that's why I've been so kind of like unable to do things the past couple of weeks. And I need it to stop. Because being completely congested is not conducive to a job where you have to be on the phone all the time. You'd say LMAO. Yeah, anyone suffering like I get a full blood panel. Apparently my previous doc skipped some tests and just blamed your antidepressants and wait for it. I'd say LMAO, but I'd be pissed if you had the energy for it. Completely understandable. I really hate the fact that through a combination of just overwork and many other issues, doctors tend to be very dismissive and immediately go for the single most common thing it could potentially be, instead of actually, you know, looking at what the problem could be. I had a friend who had that issue. They had been told that their weight was the issue for the longest time. And no, it turned out they had, I think it was PCOS? Some, I don't want to call it a disorder, but it was some issue that basically made it so it was near impossible for them to lose weight without Herculean efforts, and also caused a litany of other health issues. So it's just like, yeah, that's it. So it's just like, thanks, doc. You almost got her killed. You're awful. And I just keep hearing stories about that from friends who are like, yeah, I had these issues and they were killing me, and I kept going to the doctor and they kept telling me it was this issue, until finally this horrible catastrophe that nearly killed me happened. and then they did a deeper scan and found out it was this other issue. Hey, Ceaseless Watcher. How you doing? I'm Ben Repaints. I'm a small-time miniature painter who is just trying to do the best job they can on this little goblin lady for another viewer who wanted some advice on how to improve their own painting on their own little goblin miniatures. In this case, this goes very against what I normally paint, just because I'm usually stuck into Warhammer, and it's also a lot smaller than what I normally paint. So I'm having a little bit of a struggle here, but I'm also having a lot of fun trying to figure this out. The way I typically do things is I start with a very dark shadow color. You're just building I-400 from Suyata, so you're looking for inspiration. I'm not sure what that is, and if you'd like to post a reference link or something so I could look at it, I'd love to take a look, because the modeling world and the miniature world is so much bigger than just Warhammer, and I've been stuck in my little cubby of it for a long time. But yeah, I started with like a deep purple, and I'm slowly moving up to a green because the deep purple is going to act as the shadows. You really want to make a mini of your Goblin Ranger from your Pathfinder game, however it's an online game so it wouldn't be of use. Do it anyway. Go on like Station Forge, or not Station Forge, Hero Forge or something, and get an STL of it, and then send me the file and I'll print it for you. Because that would be cool. It could be a desk caddy. Yeah, exactly. Darkbolt's got it. It would be great memorabilia. If anything, in like 3 years, you can look at the mini that you've got at your desk or whatever and be like, oh yeah, it was for this character, and all those awesome memories can flood back. Okay, so let's see what we got. Super Hobby Product Space, Rengo Kantai Space Submarine. Oh. That's a cookie policy. I am not a robot. What do we got going on here? This should work, because my VPN is turned off so that I can... Oh, it doesn't like this. Yeah, sure. Oh, that is so cool. Unfortunately, I'm not doing a vehicle, but kind of a lot of the same stuff works. Let me see. Open image, a new tab. And let's see if I can find some other images on here, because they... Ooh, that is super neat. Okay. Let's see what we got here. You just need a 2mm nozzle. That is true. That 2mm nozzle will help a lot with making sure that it looks good. Window capture. Doop. Doop. Boom. So yeah, this is what we're looking at. What a cool model. I need to get into doing vehicles because I have a lot of fun when I do them, and I'm a little anxious because I don't do them very often. But they always turn out really neat. And you can use a lot of shortcuts and tricks to make them look cool before you start getting into hyper detailing. Here's the box that it's supposed to come in. That's super neat. If you're trying to get it like the box art, it looks like, especially because it's supposed to show some wear, you could really dry brush the paler color on, and then kind of scratch in the battleship gray that it has. The idea of space submarine is breaking your brain. I guess it makes sense though, right? Because it's not. It is a pressurized cabin. It is, you know, trying to provide a living space in an area that otherwise would be uninhabitable. It's just you don't have the water pressure, kind of potentially going to murder you. You still prefer a Nagato or Mutsu, so this one's just practice. Well, it looks like it's a really good model to practice on. So best of luck with creating a super cool paint job on a super cool model. That's only going to help you make even cooler models in the long run. Okay, so the one problem I'm having right now is that because of the base color underneath, the green on here is coming through kind of pale and are kind of washed out. And so what I think I'm going to try and do to mitigate that is I'm going to go ahead and add another layer of the flat green on the spots that I think need a bit more emphasis, and then I'm going to move up eventually to my highlight color, which is going to be a lime green. I don't remember the exact name of the Vallejo bottle. I'll look it up in a second, but it is definitely going to make a lot of this pop. This is your first painting, so wish you luck. Okay, very cool. Best of luck. I hope it turns out great. If you're interested, I have a Discord that is purely for kind of talking about models and mini painting, and you're more than welcome to join it. The link should still work on my Discord or on my Twitch page, and that's a great place to get tips and tricks and guidance from other painters who are all incredibly skilled. So that is definitely an option for you. And someone is right now blowing up my phone, and I have no clue why. And since I'm using my phone as my web camera, you might have been hearing that metallic buzzing. That was my phone vibrating, because I always forget to turn it off. So what I might do is I might take a second to look at what's happening, and then that will require me to turn off the camera. But I will be back in a jiffy. And then I think, yeah, that's about as green as it's going to get. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into the highlights next. But yeah, I will be right back. Let's see. That'll work. That'll work. And that'll work. Okay, I should be back. We're gonna get rid of that, get rid of that. Test the camera. It was my mother-in-law asking some tech support questions, but she got it figured out before I could answer her. So let's see. Is this in a good place? I might need to... Oh, I see. There we go. There we go. Okay, so yeah. This is kind of what she's looking like right now, with a couple layers of Vallejo flat green over a royal purple shadow undertone, and I'm not sure if I can get her to look much richer in terms of much more saturated with that green because of how thin the layers are that I'm putting on. So I think what I'm going to do next to try and help encourage highlights on her is I'm going to move towards the next bright color, and we'll see how that's going to work. And I'm also going to need to figure out how to do that eyeshadow, because you can see that she's got some, but it's very high up there. I think I might keep that like purple and white, because that might look good against the green skin tone. So what I'm using actually is called Golden Olive, but it doesn't look that dull when it's put on the mini. It actually tends to have more of like an olive green or a lime green effect. So that's what I'm going to do. You just realized that the I-400 is the insane aircraft carrier submarine. Lordy lordy. I'm not sure what that means in terms of context, but it is huge. It looks huge, and I'm assuming that it has a bunch of tiny little ships that can go inside it and be launched from it. And if that's the case, that's freaking wild. Okay, so we've got a little bit of this lime green. I'm actually going to try and mix it in first with the flat green to create a transition color, which, given the size of the model, I probably don't need, but I want these colors to blend as well as possible. And my general wet blending skills are not too great, so hopefully this will work out okay. So kind of the same thing. I'm going to go on spots where I think the light... Oh, that's way too damp of a brush. Where the light would probably hit it the most. And create a highlight. And before I do that, I'm actually going to mix it in a little more, and then dry out the brush, because I'm now down into like the subtle highlights. Nothing compared to the Mutsu, the Nagato, plane is included. Very cool, very cool. But yeah, at this point, I don't want to have a lot of paint on the brush and a lot of water in the brush, because these highlights are going to be very minuscule in comparison to what I was just doing, and so you don't want the paint to clump, and you don't want there to be beads of water on it, because that's actually going to make it harder to get some of the smooth blends and the smooth highlights that you might be trying to get while working on this part of the model. And again, this is where having a very fine tip comes into play, and this is considerably harder to do if you don't. So it's where I really suggest, if you can, you don't necessarily need to buy an expensive brush, but have a brush that is purely for this level of detailing, because otherwise you're going to be fighting yourself a lot. Like, to be honest, I'm kind of fighting myself too right now. But I'm doing what I can to try and mitigate that this isn't a brand new brush. And in this case, I'm kind of going a lot more detailed than I probably need to. And you probably don't need to go this to this level of granularity if you don't want. But this is where you're going to need to start getting really good with your blending and pushing back and forth between the colors so that you can get a smooth blend, where otherwise you might have these rough, chunky looking blocks of blended area. The plane is included and it's effing tiny. If it's to scale, that doesn't surprise me. So what I'm doing right now is I'm taking some of the original green that I had, and I've got a very thin amount on my brush, and I'm just kind of gently pushing it back towards the lighter spot to make a better transition between the shadow of this goblin's inner thigh and the highlight I just created using the brighter color. Now, if you're looking to do really good highlights, and this is something I'm not very good at, something you've got to remember is that each highlight should cover about 60% of the area of the previous layer, because you're trying to focus to a high point. Does using mediums work on mini painting? Tremendously, yes. I'm actually very stubborn about it, and I don't use them as much as I should, but mediums are fantastic for this. They have, actually, like things like glazing mediums to use, and it does exactly what it says on the tin. It thins down the paint so that it doesn't glob as badly, and it allows you to have far better blending than if you were to just, you know, theoretically water down some of the paint and try and spread it on. In my case, I'm actually using Airbrush Flow Improver, which does a similar thing, just not necessarily as effective. The plane is 8mm. Good lord. Good. I mean, I guess the good news with that, the best thing to take from that is that you don't have to worry about painting it too detailed, because it's so small, no one's going to notice. So yeah, like that hip right there, that's probably all I need to do in terms of highlighting that hip. If I do any more, it's just going to spread over the previous highlight and create a visual clash, because it's taking up too much of the surface area. So yeah, you don't necessarily want your highlights to take up all the area that your previous layer did. You really just want it to accentuate where the light is hitting the model. And in this case, they're not showing up a whole lot. Acrylic medium should be enough, but paint brands do sell their own mediums. They are more fine-tuned, but are more expensive. Exactly, yeah. Actually, I have a great example of that. I think I have a great example. I have this stuff. It's Liquitex acrylic medium. This is a slow dry medium, which I think is a type of flow improver almost. And I have this other one, which is just matte medium, so your paints don't end up glossy. But at the same time, I also have something like technical contrast medium from Citadel, and I think this thing was like $8, and this was, I think, also about $8, and this was $12. So the specialist product is going to cost you more, but I don't think I have any Lamian medium. But it's also going to be more fine-tuned, like Darkbolt said, to the specific product you're trying to use. That's surface primer. That's airbrush cleaner. Airbrush thinner. So yeah, it really depends on how far you want to go with it. To be completely honest, it becomes all about preference at that point, because even though it is nice to have the branded hobbyist material and the branded hobbyist supplies, a lot of it is marketing. And unless you're trying to paint to, you know, a competition level, tournament level standard, you have both Lamy and medium and contrast medium and a huge jug of artist acrylic medium. Exactly. But yeah, unless you're trying to go to competition level, you know, I want to win these painting competitions, the difference is pretty negligible as far as I can tell between, you know, super ultra high contrast, Citadel branded, whatever, and going to a local paint store and getting their version of the medium. And in some cases, people just make their own. And kudos to them for that. Like, I tried to make my own dark wash using Midwinter Minis recipe for their dip wash, and by and large, it works fine. I probably need to remix it because some of the stuff has evaporated, and so it's not getting as good a connection as it should. I don't want this to come across the wrong way. Sorry, I'm splitting from my last statement, but I really appreciate the little roll of pudge they gave this goblin lady right there on the waist. Because, again, that's not something that is generally featured on female-presenting miniatures with a lot of skin. At least it wasn't when I was growing up. And it's all there. Like, the fact that she has a body with anatomy is there. With more realistic anatomy. And I just think that's super cool, because I'm so used to everything being male gaze, and so to see this character not necessarily be that is super neat. Hey Mommy Dova, how's it going? I'm painting this little goblin lady for Shiny Mew Paints as an example of how I would paint one of their minis using my techniques, because they asked for pointers on Discord, and I was like, I'm not really sure what to tell you. Because I'm not sure what you're trying to get out of it. Do you want it to look more like my minis? Do you want it to have more contrast? Do you want it... Well, I mean, I didn't know exactly what they wanted, so I was like, I'll go ahead and paint one. Your old bottle of homemade colored Mod Podge mix so you could... so old it could be turned into a pug. That's really funny. You're working on building some Black Knights. Very cool. When you say Black Knights, are you talking about a Warhammer thing, or is this another game that you've fallen into and are now interested in? Because I do not know of the Black Knights in terms of Warhams. And again, I don't know how much of this is coming across on the camera, but the whole point is to make the blends... Oh, Ravenwing Bikers. Very nice. The whole point is to make the blends very subtle, so that they're not going to be hugely transformative when you look at the mini, but if you look at it from where it was before I put them on to now, you'll see that there's definitely a little more pop in the texture of the mini. And that's kind of the whole point of doing this process, is to help little aspects about them be a lot more readable. And so hopefully, I'll have done this justice, and Shiny Mew Paints will be incredibly pleased that this video gave them a nice little tutorial in case they wanted to do or attempt another style on their mini. And yeah, you can really see it on the ear tip, how much brighter it is on the outside versus the inside. Been sitting in their boxes for a while, so you figured it's time to build them. Very true, very cool. I'm really trying not to increase my pile of shame, because unfortunately it keeps happening since I have no self-control when it comes to looking at and getting new minis. So it was probably actually a good thing that I couldn't afford the Kill Team box, starter box, because while I would like it, it's going to be here for a while, and I don't need it right now. And it would just sit here. It would actually just push back a lot of other projects that I really need to get done. Okay, go ahead and hit that little button nose to make it pop a little bit better. Hit the top of the cheeks. to hopefully bring that out a bit more. Embedded impulse buying, tried to either sell off or build your pile of shame. Yeah, I remember you when you were in between jobs. You were kind of like, I regret a little bit buying all this stuff. And I get that, but I think it was a valuable lesson learned while you had the opportunity to learn that lesson, you know? So it's, even though it stinks that you kind of have this stuff now, it's not like you're in some kind of economic danger because you have it. It's just stuff that did have a purpose when you had a little more liquidity, and now it doesn't, so you can offer it to someone else. Okay. Foreheads are where I start having problems. I'm not very good at painting the foreheads. Imagine getting a new kill team box that all the models have rat gat holes. Yeah, right. I mean, eventually that's going to be the case because my Skaven Imperial Guard team is definitely going to be a thing. I am so dialed in on eventually printing out and painting a bunch of Skaven for Imperial Guard. Okay, I think that's going to be good. And you can see she's even brighter now. Like you can actually see that that little bit of highlighting really helped brighten up the mini. And that's the whole point at this point is doing small touch-ups to make the mini go from good to great, you know? And really increasing the contrast between the purple shadows and wherever I want the highlights to be. So now I can take just the straight lime green and really just on some of the smaller spots just really push that highlight. And hopefully what that'll do, since now they're incredibly tiny highlights, is it will really show off the areas of focus I'm looking at for this one specific mini. And really guide the eye towards the bright spots of the mini. Now, what will never cease to impress me is how incredibly smooth some of these, you know, master level painters are at like making some of the blends I'm doing right now just like ungodly smooth. Like right now, and this is part of the fun of doing this live, that last highlight I did doesn't look that great. It's got some really clear delineation down near the stalking in a way that kind of looks unappealing to me. So what I'm going to try and do is I've mixed a little bit more of the green back in, flat green, and I'm going to try and see if I can blend that in a little bit better. Because otherwise it's just going to be very stark and obnoxious for me to look at. Okay. And this might not work either. I might actually end up exacerbating the problem, making it look worse. But we will see. But yeah, see? There we go. Moving on to her face, again, I don't necessarily want this to be a high gush on her face. Let's move up her arms. We're working our way up. Same kind of thing, though. I'm just trying to put highlights with this lighter green that will draw the eye towards thing, like the musculature in her bicep right here, right? And the curve in her elbow. And same with this. I don't necessarily need to blend it all back in, but I want to show off that bicep that's holding the halberd and that elbow again. Or that shoulder, not her elbow, good lord. I know anatomy, I promise. Every brushstroke, an experiment to see if it works out. Exactly. And I don't really think I need to highlight her butt a whole lot more. So I'm just going to add a little bit of speckling on there. On this one side. That did not go down as far as it should have. I gotta blend the butt shadows better, guys. And generally, when you're going from dark to light with your blending, that's what you actually want to do. If you have like I don't know if it shows off really well, but there's a clear issue right here on the butt cheek, where it's way too bright on one spot. And so what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to blend back and forth a little bit with a darker green to try and smooth out that layer by mixing back in some regular green and then mixing even more kind of dark green / purple to try and really sell that that is a shadow area. Because right now it's coming across too bright after a second ago coming across too dark. And this is where that push-pull I was just talking about comes in. Okay, I think that'll do. I don't want to focus on the Goblin butt anymore. Okay, going back to the lime green and getting some really bright highlights to work on this. And again, one way you can test it is against your thumb, because what'll happen is when you drag the paint across your thumb, you can see if it has too much moisture or too little. If you can, actually, let's do an example of this. I saw a great example from, I think, Jose Da Vinci. But if you have too much paint on your brush and it's too thick, when you put it on, you're not really going to see your skin through the paint. So let's glob it on just to show. So if I do something like this, you can see it's actually like filling in the details of my skin. But if I thin it down, and I thin it down too much, then it'll kind of bead and leave it way too glossy, and that's also not good. So part of the goal is to thin your paints down so that you can see the details in the skin without kind of the paint losing its potency halfway through, like it keeps doing right there because I have thinned it down too much. I put a whole ton of flow improver in there. Yeah. And so that's kind of how you can measure whether or not you have enough moisture in your brush, is that if you drag it across your thumb, you shouldn't see any puddling, you shouldn't see any, it should be able to kind of go into the creases of the skin, excuse me, but at the same time, not fill in the creases of your skin. Okay, so in this case, again, let's see, can I get a good... And that's one of the biggest struggles that I still have with mini painting, is learning proper brush control, learning proper moisture. Okay. And again, all I'm doing right here is trying to use some of that lime green to highlight the specific parts of her face. And this is another thing that I'm still learning how to do, and I'm not great at, is like what parts of the face to highlight whenever I'm doing this kind of thing. Because the way light hits your face is very odd, at least to me. And until you kind of learn how to massage it to reflect properly, it can look weird. Your paints are always so thick on the model that you can see the brush strokes. Yeah. I'll be honest, I haven't seen it very much on the minis you've posted, so you've clearly gotten better at it than you think you did. But it is definitely difficult finding that happy medium of like, have I thinned it down enough versus have I made it too thin? That's kind of the constant fight I've had. Okay, mix that back into just the green. Right now I'm doing some I don't want to call it high-level glazing because it certainly doesn't look high-level from here. But glazing is one of those techniques that if you learn how to do it right, it really helps smooth out your blends. But yeah, I think you can see it in most of your non-metallic gold kneecaps and the red on your weapon casings. Yeah, well, that's because, like, those colors are hard to get thin enough without them becoming watery, you know? I can definitely understand that. But yeah, there she is. There's the skin on the Gobbo. Next step is going to be to go back over all of the non-metallic bits with a brown. And her hair, her eyebrows, and the metal with a dark blue to act as a shadow for the metallics. I'm going to go black with the hair. Gonna make that metal, same with the pommel, but like everything else is either going to be gold or leathery. So I can go ahead and, actually, I think I'm going to go ahead and get rid of these before they mess up my wet palette. I finally changed the paper on my wet palette, and lordy was the old paper disgusting. But I'm going to go ahead and start putting in some browns and some blacks so that I can go ahead and start painting up the leather and the cloth and the metal and the hair. So what I typically do is I'm real lazy. I will continue to use the same wet palette cloth for a while, the wet palette paper, and I'll just oversaturate the area I was just working on with water, remove most of the paint, then tap it up with a paper towel or a tissue. I'm going to be using Pro Acryl Dark Umber because I love Pro Acryl and I think their paint consistency is amazing. And that's going to become my base coat for basically everything that isn't metal. And in the case of the things I want to make gold, it is going to be the base coat. And hopefully I've given myself enough. Okay. The good news is that I really don't need to use my Vallejo brush for this because nothing is very tiny. So I'm going to be using an old Citadel base brush. I still don't like their brushes too much. I feel like they degrade at a faster rate than they should, and they don't hold a tip like they should given how much you pay for them. But that's going to be cost of doing business. Now actually, we're going to go ahead and do the boots. I think I'm going to make the stockings white. And so I'm actually going to go up from the same dark blue that I am for the metal. But it's going to end up being a white. I did that on some Terminator heads, and I really like how it turned out because they are very clearly a blue saturated shadow underneath. And given the general rest of the color on this individual, this mini, I think that'll work pretty nicely. Man, her shoes look incredibly painful to wear. And I guess that makes her a badass for being able to wear them so comfortably, but I'm glad that I will never have to wear a pair of shoes like this. Because I don't know if you can tell, you still want to try and do a blue undershadow for a red armor. It's going to look fucking awesome. Blue undershadow for red was the first time I ever did like a zenithal highlight and really understood why you do a zenithal highlight. I made a kill team back when I first got my airbrush out of a bunch of Reavers from like the 8th edition starter box that I wasn't using for anything else. And for one of them, I made them like 1000 Sun because a loyalist 1000 Sun because I had just gotten through reading 1000 Suns and I was really into, or no, I read Prospero Burns, that's it. I was really into how the 1000 Suns were portrayed before Magnus's fall. So I was like, man, I really want to have 1000 Sun in my kill team. So yeah, that's something that exists out there. If you give me a second, I can pull the mini out and you can see how the shadows really played off it. Because I didn't do anything special. I legit just primed it blue and then oversprayed it with red, and it looks really good. Probably be leather, so we're gonna go ahead and make the thigh strap that's holding the knee brace. Go ahead and do that as a brown leather as well. Same with up here. And then once I finish this little bit, I'm gonna stop for a second. I'm gonna find that one Reaver. Okay. It really stinks that they made the Reaver so cool in Space Marine 2, and they're so lame in like everything else. So yeah, this guy got a blue undercoat. I think it's like a really dark blue undercoat, but they definitely have a blue undercoat. And it turned out really good. I really like how the color looks on it. And I think I might have just... No, it's definitely airbrushed. But you can see it's not quite black, but it reads as black simply because of how good the contrast is against the dark red. So yeah, especially with a lighter blue, I strongly suggest doing that because it's going to look really good. Okay, let's go ahead and add some more. Again, I'm going to go ahead and do like the the leather wrap, the rope, their wrist wrap. The whole thing is going to be getting this dark brown undercoat and shadow coat, so I can then work up using a couple of different colors. In some places, and this is a huge reason why you prime your minis black. In some places, I can't quite reach it, so in those places, they're just going to remain the black, which will play as just kind of a default shadow, which is good for me. I don't like priming minis gray specifically for that reason. It leads to weird bright areas that weren't hit by your paint, and they look odd, but that's my personal opinion. Some people are really good at priming their minis gray and getting the most out of it. I am not one of them. Okay. Next is going to be her little string that she's got for her bottom, or her belt, or whatever the heck this is. And see, again, the fact that this mini is so small is actually going to play to my favors, because it means that my blending doesn't have to be super buttery smooth as I work my way across it. So hopefully, as I continue, I think, no, that's a collar. I've got to make the collar. Okay. Because the eyes have so much less room to parse through this thing, I'm going to be able to do a lot more broad strokes when it comes to doing the shading for this thing and the highlighting for this thing. Once again, that really works in my favor. Okay. Little straps that are holding her chest in. I definitely did not need as much as I thought I would. That's okay. There we go. Now what's really going to stink is I'm going to zoom in on this to take the photo, and everything is going to be messed up. It's going to be so sloppy looking to get over the fact that it's so tiny. But there we go. Now she's got some brown... Actually, let's go ahead and give her a golden ring loop, or ear loop too. Ear hoop. And I can't forget about the halberd haft. And again, for anyone wondering, this is using Pro Acryl Dark Umber. I love these Pro Acryl colors. They go on very smooth. I think they are absolutely fantastic. Okay. Let's deal with zoom photographs. It's way larger than we ever managed to paint. Yeah, I know, right? It, I can't remember who it was. I think it was Penny Arcade recently made a joke about that, because they're getting into Warhammer 2. And they were like, this is the best thing I've ever painted. It looks fantastic. And from, you know, the angle that they've got it at, yeah, it looks perfectly fine. But then he takes a picture of it, and it shows the zoomed in picture where everything is just globbed on and looks terrible. And so the last panel is just him crying on the couch. Like, that's incredibly relatable to anyone who's worked really hard on a mini, only to see what it looks like close up. But yeah, I do think one of my favorite questions that I've been asked since I started streaming on here was like, do you use a magnifying glass? And the answer is no, I don't have a magnifier. And it's because when I first started painting, I tried to use a magnifier, but I also had contacts in, and so the magnifier would just make me violently ill every time. You feel called out? Everyone feels called out. Trust me. No one's minis, unless their name is like Darren Latham or Richard Gray or, you know, Sergio Calvo or something. Everyone's minis look chunky when they zoom in. I'll look at your minis from a distance and go nice, then take a picture and sob. Exactly. You know what will help with that, actually, Mommy Dova, is having a good lamp. Because having a good lamp allows you to see more of the details up close without needing a magnifier. Speaking of up close, my lunatic ass trying to paint this one underbite fang. That works. Okay, I don't think I missed anything else in terms of brown, so the next thing for me to do is to go ahead and start working my way up the color palette. Hey, the Ceaseless Watcher, you've begun to paint. Cool, fantastic, good luck, Godspeed. Same with any kind of art, be it painting on canvas, digital art, texture painting, zooming close enough, everything is just shapes of paints. Exactly. My partner said it best, and it really changed how I think of painting. You're basically just lying to your eyes. And I think that's such a smart way of putting it. Whenever you're painting, you are just lying to your eyes and telling them that they're seeing something out of a bunch of rando shapes. I have ivory and I have bold titanium white. I do not need bold titanium white. I will take the ivory. I will mix that in. Let's see what we can do from there. So this is, again, Pro Acryl, ivory. I keep hearing that their dropper bottle is absolute ass, but I'll be honest, I like this system because when you seal it properly, the nozzle actually goes above the crease. And so when you unscrew it, you have a pretty good release system set up. So I'm pretty down with this. I like this system a lot, and even if it does require me to every now and then hit it with like a tissue paper and wipe it off, it ain't bad. I mean, that's because they are. You're correct. Artists are illusion magicians. They're convincing people that on a flat canvas, they're seeing depth, they're seeing life, they're seeing everything, and I think that that's amazing. And artists who do that, whether they're still learning or whether they're really good at it or whether they're masters at it or whether they're bad at it, they should all be proud of themselves because they're trying to do something that's legitimately insane when you think about it. Okay, so here's where things are going to get a little dicey for me because I'm going to be trying to paint very, very small areas with a highlight. And so again, when you're doing this, you're really looking at light placement. You're looking at potentially where would the light hit it the hardest to provide the illusion that this thing is being hit with light. And so I'm going to try my best. But again, this is something that can be a little bit daunting if you're new. And especially to try and really bring out the clarity, you need to do edge highlighting. And edge highlighting is the devil. Especially when you're working on like a Space Marine where there are edges everywhere. But the idea is by having a border that is slightly brighter than the body, you are showing the, you are convincing the eyes that there's clear separation there. And unless you have really good eyes and a really steady hand, it's very difficult. Like people who can edge highlight the individual wraps on a sword haft or whatever, or a spear haft, or on a fist, like you guys are amazing. I have nothing but the utmost respect for you, but I hate you. Because like right here, you can see there's a bit of muddiness between the top of the wrap and the elbow of the forearm, and part of that is my fault. I didn't do a very good job clearly painting what's what. But by adding just the smallest edge highlight, I can create that clarity. And now you can really see where the wrap ends and where the skin of the model begins. And I might be shortchanging myself. I might not be as bad at this as I pretend to be, or I think I am. But the fact is, it's still an immense challenge for me to do. And every time I get it right, I still feel lucky for getting it right, you know? And I mean, that's kind of the beauty of this hobby, though, is it's all about growth. Everyone gets better the more they do it. Whether they think they are or not, as long as they're conscientiously practicing and developing, they are getting better. There we go. Now I'm actually going to go back over this with a lighter color. This right now is just kind of the placeholder to get it from dark brown into more of a clothier color. Yeah, next time you have to do it again. Exactly. Get some more of that in. Let's go ahead and get the bow on her butt. Okay, and now she has been highlighted, and hopefully as a viewer, you can see that she has gotten a little bit brighter with some of her leather. And so now I'm going to mix in more of that ivory, and I'm going to try and hit even smaller parts of the miniature. And this is where my ability to do this is going to fall apart. So, wish me luck. I hope your painting is going well. Mine's about to become a problem because I don't have a tip that's quite bright or quite sharp enough to hit a lot of the spots I'm trying to hit. So all I can do is pray that it plays along with me plays well enough with me for long enough that I can actually hit some of these spots. Okay, try and get these straps, shall we? And the same thing I talked about earlier, you're not trying to hit all of the same spot, so I'm not trying to go over the exact same lines that I just did. I'm just trying to get about 60% of that to really show that the light is concentrating on these specific spots. And you can see right there, there was a little bit of a mess up because it was too much water, too much moisture. That's okay. It's in a spot no one's going to see. Okay, do a little bit of gentle dry brushing essentially over that stuff. You're painting black on black so you can't see crap. I know, right? Whenever I have to do that, I just kind of airbrush it. Like, I can't see what I'm doing. This feels dumb. Spray paint. And generally that does a good job of getting over that spot. Now, the other thing to think about also is that not all black paint is built the same way. It's built equally. So you might actually be able to see a little bit of color variation while it's drying, and that might help you. Okay, let's see if I can do some of that same line work on this fist. That actually turned out okay. Same thing though. You're trying to create separation. The whole point of this is creating separation. So hopefully that's something that you are able to do successfully as you work your way across the mini painting these highlights. Okay, that's a little blurry. Stop being blurry. There we go. I think actually... No, I know what I'm going to do. I think as far as the leather goes... No, the boots. I got to do the boots. Can't forget about the boots. The boots are not going to go as... Oh dear, that was really wet. The boots are not going to go as sharp a contrast because they're boots, so the leather is going to be a little darker. What I might actually do is be a bit lazy and hit the boots with a shade. You're using Tamiya flat black. Yeah, that'll do it. I actually don't know much about the Tamiya paint line. I know they're typically used for Gunpla and the like, but I've stuck mainly to things like Games Workshop and the paints used for those, which my understanding is that they're fairly different from the likes of Gunpla, from the likes of that crowd, and so they go on differently and have different properties, but I have not used it anywhere near enough to comment on it. And by that I mean I haven't used it at all. A dark gray dry brush over a black base, middle gray to start doing highlights, then darkening that gray to start mixing it with the dark gray transition, and finishing up with white dot highlights is what I would think trying to do quick. Yeah, that's how I would approach it. I would start with like a black or a dark gray and then slowly build my way up so that the highlights had that nice shine to it, and it still reads as black. But that is an awful lot to ask for a first paint job. Okay. I don't even know I'm highlighting this. That's going to be gold trimmed in a minute. Okay. Oh dear. I hope it's not failing. Please don't fail. That would really suck, because that's a 13-hour print that's working right now. Okay. That's the back of it a little bit. Some of these details I'm probably actually going to have to do off-stream, simply because I can't really make them out with my vantage point right now. I'm not far away from paint desk or anything, but between how the lighting is set up so it reflects best on the camera and how I have to stand to look at it, it's definitely not easy. Let's go ahead and hit the back of the heel. Yeah, I'm not exactly sure how I'm going to paint the... actually, no, I think I know what I'm going to do. Let's say the trim on the boots is giving me a bit of a hard time because I'm not sure what I want to do. But what I think I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to paint them the lighter brown and block them in. And that way I have something to work off of, and I can actually shade it brighter because I'm still mixing the ivory in with the brown to create this specific color. And it's just going to go a whole lot brighter than the brown of the leather boot. So let's see if that's going to work. Now, unfortunately, I'm dealing with the other problem that I mentioned earlier, and that is moisture control. Because my brush was very wet when I mixed it in with the brown and the ivory initially, everything wants to puddle. And when you're working on a mini of this size, that's definitely a problem. So as best as I can, I tried to wick away as much of the water as possible. But it's very clearly still being a problem. Now, the good news is it's paint. It's paint and it's watered down paint, so it's leaving very thin layers. You should be able to paint over it pretty easily without a whole lot of trouble. But at the same time, you really don't want to make more work for yourself. Because one of the biggest demotivators when it comes to miniature painting in general is if you've got a lot of things you want to paint and you spend a whole lot of time on an individual model, unless you were having like the most fun in the world with it, you're going to get burnt out because you don't want to have to do that kind of labor for the next model. It gets demoralizing, right? If you've got all the time in the world and you're still running on that new painter high, then cool, go for it. But eventually, you'll find yourself getting increasingly discouraged with painting models because each one is just taking up too much of your time and effort. And it begins to feel Sisyphusian. So you don't necessarily need a million shortcut techniques to never feel that, but you also don't want to make each paint job unnecessarily difficult. Right now, I'm just trying to hit all of the boot trim with this ivory brown mix, so that way the boots clearly stand out. And what I'm probably going to do is I'll highlight them with just the pure ivory, so that there's at least some degree of contrast between the highlight and the mid-tone. We're going to see how that works right now, because I think I'm there. Hopefully this will turn out okay. Because again, you're kind of watching me experiment as I do this. I've never painted a model like this before, because normally I paint the Warhams, but I'm doing this primarily to show another user that this is definitely a way you can paint your mini if you want to get like much deeper into the weeds with detail. And then they can use this video as they please. Is it normal that I suddenly see two engines, or should I open a window? Please open. Oh, well, I mean, you're using acrylics, I hope. If you're using acrylics, they're not toxic, but you might be... I would open a window. If everything is starting to be if you're starting to get woozy and whatnot, open a window. But hopefully if you're using acrylics, that shouldn't be a problem. If you're using oil paints, then by God, open a window. And don't lick your brush. All bad things. Okay, so the metal is going to be blue. The boots with the fur. No, not. Yeah. Again, just highlighting some of the edges where you think that light would most likely catch on whatever it is you're trying to highlight. I think that'll be about good. Yeah, exactly. If you're using, like Darkbolt said, if you're using any kind of spirits, if you're using any kind of paint thinner, any chemicals, open a dang window. Okay, I'm going to keep these colors on the palette, because the next thing I probably should do, actually, is the gold. Since I already have this out. Paint is tastiest off the brush, especially the Nuln Oil. Those are non-toxic. Oil paints are very toxic. Eating oil paints off the brush is how you die, so you don't want to do that. So what I'm going to use is Vallejo Bright Orange, which is the only one I really have. Cad Yellow tastes the best. It will for a minute, and then all your teeth fall out. By the way, good morning, Mr. Motorhead. How are you doing? I hope your day is going well. I haven't seen you in a little while. I have the day off. It is a government holiday because it is Veterans Day, so I am chilling like a villain and painting up a tutorial goblin for another user that's pretty regular. So we've got the brown, we got the dark umber brown. I'm gonna mix in some of this this bright orange to create what I hope is kind of a warm golden brown orange. And that will bring some warmth. Hey, the Ceaseless Watcher, thank you for following. You always lurk in chat. Well, I appreciate it. And now, you're okay? Hope I'm doing good. I'm doing very well, which is something I normally haven't been able to say until recently. The current job is going well. I feel great. I'm getting, you know, ever closer to quitting the other job because I no longer need it. So things are going really well. I wish I could spend more time streaming and whatnot because I really enjoy it. And it's hard to get viewers and followers when you're working 10 hours a day or 9 hours a day. But, you know, it is what it is. Hopefully that job will eventually be making so much money that it won't matter. But yeah, right now, I'm just going to go ahead and paint on this, this orangey brown to act kind of as a warm build up to what's eventually going to be a fairly strong gold. And I found a couple ways to do this gold, some of which are very funny to me, because it really is just me dry brushing slop after slop layer. Yeah, it is the hard part, but you know, the only way to do it is to try, right? Okay, I think this is supposed to be a golden ring down there, and then she's got some golden spikes. I think I'm gonna make the two knee pads like a metallic, so not necessarily a gold, and that's hopefully gonna look okay. But now that I've got, this is going to be the third thin coat on here, you can really see the orange starting to assert itself underneath the brown to really bring out the fact that this is going to be a very strong gold eventually. Same here and here, I'm just trying to give it a little bit more contrast. Okay, and then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to mix some more of the orange into the brown, and then I'm going to throw some of the golden yellow into it as well, which in this case is Averland Sunset. And the Averland Sunset is going to start tilting it towards a yellow, which will allow me to blend up to more of a golden yellow. And so hopefully kind of the same thing, I'll be able to do this over a few layers. And it'll create a nice convincing non-metallic metal gold for parts of her weapon and armor. Now the biggest problem for me, which you guys have probably noticed, is just keeping the damn model on camera. Because my hands tend to wander. And what I'm actually kind of doing here, and this is through a mixture of laziness and sloppy technique, is I'm almost doing what's called a glaze. Because all of the paint I'm putting on is still very, very wet. And that means that it's not getting a full chance to assert itself as a layer of color on the previous layer. So it's creating this kind of sloppy, semi-translucent, wet layer. And generally that's what they call glazing. Now normally it's done with a lot more skill and precision, but I'm not good at this, so it's not being done with any skill or precision. It's just being done with a sledgehammer. Okay, let's go ahead and glaze up. I don't want to use that phrase here. Let's go ahead and build up some more color on the ring. And then the hoops for the earrings. And you can see it's already starting to take more of a golden hue to it because we've gone from that that dark brown up to like a warm orangey gold into a yellow. Now the next step is going to be to add some more of this yellow and kind of make it the primary color. And then make an even smaller highlight. And again, this is Averland Sunset. This is a Citadel paint that I continue to use because I like the warm tone behind it. It's not quite a yellow, and it's not quite an orange, and so it hits that nice kind of golden color that you think of when you think of gold. And again, whenever you're doing highlights, you want to limit each preceding layer of paint so that it doesn't just end up dominating the previous one, because otherwise you will not have enough contrast over a specific area as you want. So that's kind of what's happening here. I'm doing a little bit of edge highlighting to really show that the metal is creating a high reflective area. And then I'm painting in a smaller layer over a smaller space to show that light is reflecting off of that space. And what will eventually happen as it focuses in is that you're going to see where the ray of light is really, really asserting itself on the metal. And then I'm going to kind of repeat this process for the other metallic parts, but done with a different color. Whatever you're doing is like comparing a brain surgeon to a drunk butcher to me. Fair enough, I guess. I mean, this took a lot of practice. I'm not going to lie and say that, you know, I woke up one day and was like, I'm going to try non-metallic metal, and it's going to look great. That was not the case. I have some really friggin' ugly non-metallic metal practice. So just know that you will eventually get there, and you will eventually learn these skills. It's just a matter of practice. I wish I had saved it, but when I first was trying to learn non-metallic metal, it was not good. It looked really bad, and it made me never want to try it again. But then there was a painting competition at my local game store, and you could win some pretty nice discounts or store credit for trying to enter. So I was like, okay, I'm going to try and enter because I think I'm a pretty good painter. And I purchased Rabute Gilliman, who is this incredibly large, well, not incredibly large, he's a sizable mini in this golden armor that has like gold trim all over the place. And my dumbass said, I'm going to try and learn non-metallic metal on this mini. And then I did. Yeah, like anything else that's cool, it takes time to learn. Yeah, you don't immediately get good at this stuff. Oh, you know what else I forgot to do? I painted the fang, the underbite fang on this lady orc brown, but I never went ahead and upgraded her fang to ivory. Very gently. There we go. Try and touch that fang with an ivory. And then someone else got a cool Gilliman. You wondered who painted it? Yeah. What kind of person painted your Gilliman? Speaking of, I showed your Gilliman off on a recent stream of one of my favorite streamers for their community day, and the first thing they said about it was, "Look at that sword," because they were very impressed with the flaming sword. And that's really funny to me, Mommy Dova, because that was the lowest effort sword I could have done. I legitimately, like, have you seen the diorama of the Gilman painting miniature Astartes? I have. I think it's very silly, in a good way. Okay, so now the gold has been painted in using this really nice warm yellow. What I'm going to do next is actually pop some ivory into the Averland Sunset, and what that's going to do is it's actually going to make the Averland Sunset pale, and eventually that's going to lead up to a really nice ice yellow that I will be able to use to create the highlights. Oh, someone went ahead and shared something cool, so let's go ahead and take a look at that first. I'm surprised they didn't lose it over the purple-based armor. It's so good. I don't think they recognized it was purple-based, and so I didn't say anything because I completely forgot, but finished on the boy. Just need to let it dry for the base from in the varnish. I love orcs so much. I love them. I love them. I love them. Orcs are great. We need more orcs. I wish they went back to the old-looking orcs, because I do like the new ones, but the old ones just has so much more personality behind it. Okay, here we go. 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 So, let's go. Let's go. Let's go. Window capture. Here we go. Bam. This is what Darkvolt has been working on. Look at that orc. The rust effects you got on that orc are stupid good. That's phenomenal. Great job, Darkvolt. That looks awesome. I need to up my Rusty Blade game. And honestly, like the face shadow and the muscle shadow, you nailed it, man. That looks awesome. I hope to see this in the next community day. I love that the orc has cake. That's really funny to me. But yeah, that looks great. The amount of contrast you were able to get on like the deltoid to the tricep and bicep, I'm in awe. That looks phenomenal. I love orcs. There's so many fun things to paint on the orc too, and I think that's a huge reason why I love them, is just that they have so much weird musculature and material, and they're neat. Okay, so this one I've mixed a little bit of the ivory in with the Averland Sunset, and you can see already it's creating a really nice highlight that makes it pop. I just had a brain blast because I don't want to use any metallics with my brushes. Why don't I just sponge on the metal on the very end? Exactly. And that's going to give it just enough shine to remind people that it is a metallic. So yeah, you notice I'm doing just ever so slightly brush strokes with this little amount of bright yellow. And you can use an ice yellow for this. If you have it, you can use Dorn yellow. They all kind of work the same way. It's just meant to be a yellow that is desaturated with enough white to come across as brighter. And so that's good. That's what you want. You don't want it to cover the whole thing. You just want it to have like a little concentration on it, so that way it reads as, you know, a light hitting the source. And same thing here. I don't want to create a thick line of this color. I just want it to create a little line, which will make your brain think, oh, that's where the light is focused on that surface. Same thing up there. That's always been the hardest part for me with non-metallic metal, is just trying to figure out, like, how much coverage am I supposed to use to get this non-metallic metal? How far am I supposed to go to make this non-metallic metal look non-metallic? And the answer is about a step less than you think you'll need. And that's been the weirdest thing for me, because I'm always so anxious about not doing enough. But yeah, see, now you've got a nice metallic glint coming off of the metal, and it looks fantastic. I don't have my glasses on, so that's probably cheating a little bit, but I think it looks good. Dark magic. That's what I felt when I first saw it. And it's always like, you see these speed painting videos of these masters do it, and then you're like, that's not how it works. You're lying to me. You didn't actually do that. You scribbled a little bit, and then you lied. And you did some other magic to make it work. There's a great one. He's a Filipino artist named Don Serratos, and he has this great video of doing like a shoulder pad and going from just like a dull black all the way up to this beautiful non-metallic. And I think he's lying. I think he's lying to me. I think he's telling me things, but it's not true, and he's lying. So like here it is on his Instagram. Tell me that's not bullshit. How do you go from that scratchy mess in the upper left to that absolutely beautiful, ultra real looking non-metallic on the lower right? I don't believe you, sir. You're lying to me. You drew a circle in step 1, and then you drew the whole owl in step 2. Yeah, it really is just glazing. It's just this incredible amount of glazing and you know, deft brushwork. Let me see if I can actually find the video, because he posts like I guess I'll call them reels. There it is. Is this it? Yep. Okay. So here he is going from start to finish over a short period of time. And just tell me this is not what from Jason, like Jason from Monument Hobbies to watch your paintings. Exactly. Exactly. Check this out though. So he's just like screw, and when you see the process happening, it's a little more like, oh, okay, I see it, but it still feels like absolute black magic. And kudos to him for doing such an amazing job and making it look as good as it does. But it's just like, you liar, you absolute liar. Okay. So at some point I want to get to that level. I think actually I'm done with the gold. I've got the earrings done. I've got the metal done. So the next thing for me to do is to go ahead and actually no, I didn't hit that little bit right there. One moment, I'll be right back. I think my 3D printer is being stupid, and I'm going to be very sad. Oh yeah, no, stop. Oh dear. Man, yeah, that really hecked it up. I don't know how that happened, but that really hecked up. He was scratching and jumping. I think I just need to re-zero it. That's okay. I'll do that later. So, I have an Anycubic Viper, and generally it works okay, but every now and then I guess I need to re-center the bed, re-zero the bed, and I haven't done that in a while. And so I was trying to print some bases, and it was like, how would I do chaos instead and scrape the shit out of the print bed? And so that's what it was working on just now. So I'll fix that later. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and do something kind of similar over here. And once again, I'm just doing a dark brown base coat underneath, and then I'm gonna add some orange to it. And that orange is just going to be slightly lighter in color. And I'm not going to hit the same spots. I'm going to paint in just a little bit around it so there still manages to be a dark brown shadow where the light would least likely hit it, right? I don't know how well that's showing up. Kind of like a CNC machine, re-zero every time. Yeah, I'm bad about that. I'm admittedly very lazy about re-zeroing it. So that's going to be the plan, is once it cools down and I finish with this, I'm going to go ahead and re-zero it. And again, I'm just taking slightly lighter variants and adding to it. Now add the yellow to the orange. Again, just adding it to where I think the light would most likely hit it, which I've now done. And now I'm just going straight yellow. It should, in theory, be just a smidge brighter. And now I'm going to add some of, and if you notice, the even smaller area, I'm going to add some of the ivory in. I'm basically just going to kiss the rim. Just like that. Just dabble in a little bit right there. And there you go. Now I've got a non-metallic metal on the bottom. I don't even think I need to go... One moment. Man, I really don't. I was gonna say, I don't even think I really need to go all the way up to ivory to really sell the brightness. But you know what? Just as a little bit of a thought experiment, let's do that. Let's do just the smallest amount of ivory on this to sell what's supposed to be the brightest spot on each part of this mini. Same kind of thing. The same thing, I'm not using the ivory to get the same coverage I was getting everywhere else. I am using it very sparingly and only in where I think the highest concentration of light would be from where it's getting hit by the light source. So I don't need to have it cover the exact same spots. I can just have it barely making contact in a lot of areas. And just those little concentrated bits and points of contact will tell the eyes everything it needs to know about where the light's hitting it. Oh, yeah. Her under her not loincloth, whatever you want to call it. Again, same thing, just gonna touch right there, touch right there, touch right there. And now she has, yeah, the belt wrap, thank you. Okay, so that's all done. Next is gonna be the non-metallic metal steel. And her hair, and then eventually her eye makeup. Thank you for giving me the right term for that. Belt wrap is definitely a much better term than my brain could process. Okay, so whoops, didn't mean to knock my my camera there. So next, once again, I'm just going to saturate down the wet palette paper and pull up as much of the pigment as I can. Get some tissue, dab up the last of the moisture, and that lets me kind of reuse that spot. Someone eventually is going to come in and be like, what the heck are you doing? Just use new palette paper. And they're going to be right, because palette paper is not especially expensive. But I'm also a miser in some ways. And so that's what I'm going to be miserly with. Okay? I'm actually going to be using Scale 75 Deep Blue to do all of this metal, because black can work, but it generally just reads as grayscale, which for some people just doesn't look that great, and they don't like it. Me personally, I'm not a fan of grayscale, so instead, I like to use the deep blue. And that brings some nice color to, oh dear. Oh dear, oh dear. It's clogged. One moment, please. It is very clogged. This is the worst part about some of these, is that they get supremely clogged and then they're impossible to really use. And this is actually a reason why I don't like the traditional dropper bottle, is that with some paints, it's fine, it never clogs, it's whatever. But with other paints, when it clogs, it just creates this potential explosion, which is obnoxious and annoying. And I've had it happen with Vallejo Green. I've had it happen with this one a lot, actually. And it's bloody obnoxious. But I've never had it happen with Pro-Acryl. So it's a big reason why I want to move to Pro-Acryl. So just give me a moment as I clean up this mess. Hopefully that worked and cleared it out. Yep, cleared it out. I can get some more. And I shouldn't need too much. I just needed like a pea-sized droplet, but I had to go through all that to do it. Okay. And actually, I can go back to using the Citadel brush. Now, one thing you may have noticed, and I mentioned it before, is having a brush with a good point. I have Winsor & Newton Series 7 brushes, which are considerably higher quality than most others. And they're also considerably more expensive than most others. To a lot of people's detriment, because people don't want to spend 20 bucks on a dang brush. And that's perfectly valid, and I'm not going to argue with you on it because I agree. From what I understand, Citadel brushes have actually gone down in quality quite a bit because a lot of their old masters retired, and their current staff are nowhere near as good at manufacturing the brushes with the same level of consistency. Now, I don't want to bash any workforce because they're doing the best they can, but my understanding is that they're really not worth the $20, $25 you spend on them anymore. So once I'm finished with my Winsor & Newtons, my plan is to move to Rosemary & Company, who also make Kolinsky Sable hair brushes, which are the type that you need or should get to try and get a lot of the positive features of Winsor & Newton brushes, but they're like $4 a piece instead of $20 a piece. So apparently they're not as good, but they're better than paying $10 to $15 for Citadel brushes. You haven't had any problems with Pro-Acryl yet. That is encouraging to hear, because that is the way I'm moving, is I am moving to Pro-Acryl. And I haven't had any problem with their paints yet. I love them to death. I'll see how good they are in 6 months after I've done a lot more painting with them. But right now, they have been phenomenal. So I'm also going to paint her socks this blue, because I'm going to use it as kind of a neutral dark shade color across all of the what's going to eventually be white fabrics. And they're going to have different highlights and whatnot, which is going to be interesting. I've never done this before, because I've never had to paint thigh-high socks. So we'll see how this turns out, and hope I did not make life miserable on myself by painting everything around them. I have made life miserable on myself by painting everything around them. Okay, the good news is generally in these spots, can't see it, so it's not going to matter too much. Okay, I think that's going to be good. Oh yeah, I also was going to do her hair the same thing, because it's just a good neutral dark color. So we're going to go ahead and do that, and eventually we'll paint over those wraps for her pigtails, and we'll see what we can do from there. I believe that this mini is probably going to take me all morning to paint, but I also believe that for the level of quality I feel like I've gotten, however long it's been, 2-3 hours is not too bad. Priming is done, time to experiment. Good luck. I hope it turns out okay. I would recommend dry brushing it, but I also recommend go wild and have fun. Do what you want to do, ignore any advice that you don't want to follow. No gods, no masters, all you, buddy. Just remember, there is no wrong way to do this. Yeah, we're reaching about 2 hours of stream time, and I think the last things I really need to do are the metal bits and her hair. Obviously the base, but I'm not super worried about the base, to be completely honest. It's a part of the mini that I can always go back to. I'm most worried about painting the actual Goblin, so that Shiny Mew Paints has a video they could follow if they ever want to try and vary up their painting style. That's what I love most about this hobby. As long as you get the result you want, that is the correct way. Exactly. If you think it looks good, then that's all that matters. And if anyone else wants to argue with you, well then when they paint their minis, they can go ahead and do it the way they want to. But unless they have bought the minis and have given them to you to say, hey, could you paint these in this specific style that I want, and you agree, then it is purely up to you what is good and bad. Acceptable and unacceptable. Speaking of acceptable, I wonder if I can be a little feral and give her this dark blue as an eyeshadow. This is something else. This is another skill I'm still learning, is like angling the brush so it only hits the spots you want it to hit. Is a very difficult skill, and I'm still not very good at it. And if you paint minis, you sculpt yourself, neener, they can never do it themselves. Exactly. Oh, that's gonna look like clown makeup. Oh no! Oh no! Let's see if I can push that off a little bit. Nope, I've just made it worse. Oh no, it's all falling apart, guys. I'm going down. And see, that was a great example of why moisture on the brush is an important thing to have control of. If you have too much moisture on the brush, it will bead and it will cause issues when you're trying to be precise, like what just happened. Oh, that's going to look terrible. Sorry if this isn't in focus, guys. I'm so worried about getting this right now that I am no longer trying to paint for the camera. I'm trying to paint for me. Okay. I think that'll have to work. Okay, now what we are going to do, actually, is for the metal parts, I'm going to add some cool gray, which in this case is Vallejo light gray. And that's going to work as a transition color and a highlight up until I get to the white, the ultra white highlights. And then for everything else, like the hair, I'm going to go ahead, yeah, let's not do that. I'm going to go ahead and just go straight to white because the highlights will be a lot less frequent. And also eyebrows. Scared about getting the eyebrows, but let's see what we can do here. For the people who use magnifiers, I salute you because they throw off my orientation so badly because I'm so unfamiliar with using them that they're almost worthless to me. It's like, to me, it almost feels like I'm painting drunk. But again, a large part of that really is just because I'm not familiar with them. So if I were to practice with them, if I were to keep working, I would probably get really good at manipulating with them. But right now, it's just easier for me to do without them. Okay, I think that'll have to do. Now let's mix some of this gray in. Some flow improver into the dark blue. And this is also where I struggle. Also, salute to makeup artists painting faces for minis and digital taught me respect. Exactly. Okay, and so this is another part that I'm going to let you know quite plainly that I struggle with. Non-metallic metal difficult. Anyone who tells you otherwise is either just amazing or they're lying. Non-metallic metal and the way metal reflects off of certain objects, or the way light reflects off of certain objects, is always going to be wild to me. And at one day I hope to be good at it, but that is not today. Today I am still garbage at non-metallic metal. And I am extremely, I don't want to say envious, but I think it's really cool when people are really good at it because it is such a difficult skill to master. Especially on with how geometric this piece is. Lordy, 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 I have made life difficult for myself. But what you generally want to do is you want to create a, I don't want to call it a crisscrossing, but definitely a situation where light is going off on chunks. Lying most likely. And I'm pretty good. I appreciate that. I'm trying to be better. But it's difficult. It's difficult. But yeah, generally, you're just trying to create reflective surfaces and emulating where you think light would hit them versus where it would be reflected back off. And it would reflect something else. So that's what I am attempting to do here. and I am starting by slowly layering up to a brighter color across different parts of the miniature. Especially on that blade. Lordy, lordy. Okay. Next is going to be... I think I want to addend it. I'm not garbage at non-metallic metal. I'm garbage at doing blades. Blades difficult because they have so much odd geometry on them. And a lot of that is just based on practice. So if you guys ever want to be inspired or encouraged, just remember that you get better by practicing. We've talked about it a few times, and it holds true every time. Practice. More exposure creates more familiarity. I don't know why my throat went froggy. But more exposure will create more familiarity, which will create more comfort and will make you better. So always, always, always practice, practice, practice. I'm gonna go ahead. I've been waiting for this to create some decrease in contrast up here. Is I was gonna make the rim of her collar this metallic. It doesn't look that bad, but I'll need to work for it to be better. Exactly, and that's what you want. You want to be able to say, looks pretty okay, but I can help make it better. Because if you can see where you can make it better, then you already know where you need to improve. And that's the best feeling. Because then you know what you can work on. You have to find how you want to paint the shapes and to emphasize what you're aiming for. Exactly. And honestly, that's where I struggle with the non-metallic metals. I have a hard time figuring out what shapes I need to paint it as. And I know that there's ways to do it. And I know that referencing the basic shapes, like they do in Art for Light, helps. But it's difficult. My brain no always work you that way. Okay, so by and large, I've hit the collar with the darker color, which means I can move on to the lighter one. Back of the collar. Go. Mix it back in with the light gray, which will give it more of a lighter blue hue. I just made a mess everywhere around me. It happens. Yep. That's why you train your brain to think that way. That's where the exposure comes in. That's where the constant working on it comes in. The more you normalize it, the more your brain will start normalizing it. And then your brain will start focusing on the other important aspects that'll help you get better. And yet, making a mess is one of the unfortunate side effects. And that's with everything. That's why you got to learn your mise en place. Which, if you don't know, is like a cooking term for knowing where everything is and where everything needs to be. So yeah, best of luck with cleaning that up. Okay. Now all I'm going to do is add even more of this gray in. Oh, did all of it evaporate? I think it all evaporated. I had airbrush flow improver on one of my pennies that I have on here, but I think it all evaporated. And so kind of the same thing. Just hitting the spots that are going to end up being the brightest. I might have left too deep a shadow in here, but that's okay. And actually, I'll be honest, what I typically do with this stuff is I get real lazy and I just dry brush the shit out of it. And that tends to help. Because of the texture, it tends to help cover up a lot of what I would consider my mistakes. The messes on the model, message was sabotaged. Oh, okay. Also learning that making a mess or mistakes, it's not the end. Yeah. So what happened with the model that you're calling it a mess? It probably turned out okay. And just in case anyone is wondering, I have now gone into the lazy way of doing non-metallic metal, which is dry brushing. Dry brushing can get you some very adequate looking NMM, non-metallic metal. And especially if you decide to start doing what I'm doing right now, which is adding all sorts of texture to it, you can kind of cheat your way into a good non-metallic metal because it's kind of hiding the transitions, which will in turn let the eyes kind of try and parse it out. And as long as you're putting high spots and bright spots and bright spots, then you're going to have decent looking NMM. And it's just all about focusing it in the right areas. I'm painting a pipe dark red, but the red is on the frame of the engine. You might need to, is it because it kind of bled over that way, or is it because the brush accidentally slipped and went that way? Because you might need to not thin your paints down as much if that's the issue. And actually, since I'm doing much rougher brush work, I'm not going to bother using the nice brush. I'm going to use the bad brush. But kind of the best thing about that is that you can paint over it. So hopefully, you'll be able to go back, paint back over whatever you're working on. Oh, it was a slip up? Yeah, that'll happen. All you need to do is go ahead and paint back over it. And don't let it consume you that you've made that mistake. Because when you start kind of really fixating on your mistakes is where you start losing progress and you start second guessing yourself. And the best thing you can do there is just kind of oopsie poopsie and move on and make it better. Because I don't know if you've noticed, I've definitely hit some spots I shouldn't have hit with my previous layers on some of the other stuff I've done on this mini. And I just went back and covered it up. So, again, not the end of the world. Okay. You can see that doesn't look terrible. 1 done, 3 to go. Congrats! Okay, same thing, just adding more layers of a lighter color. In this case, it's almost pure light gray at this point. And honestly, I've given up on making this look clean. I'm just going to make it look textured and rough as shit because I figure that a goblin wouldn't be using a perfectly smithied piece of equipment anyway. And I'm going to kind of do the same thing. When I think I'm doing it wrong, whenever I dry brush, I always get some coated bristles marks ruining the rest of the dry brush. Dry brushing, as far as I can tell, is never meant to be super smooth. Also, hello, Snowtwig. Good to see you. How are you doing? It's just one of those things where you kind of have to trust the process and also make sure that you are loading up the brush properly, but at the same time not overloading the brush. Because dry brushing is always going to look really rough. It's just the nature of it. So you kind of got to use that to your advantage. Doing okay? Very cold? I'm sorry it's so cold over there. I honestly wish it were colder here. It's almost 75 degrees Fahrenheit, which isn't terrible, but it's definitely way too warm for near winter. But yeah, just so you are aware, I am painting this little gobbo for another viewer who paints these Twin Goddess miniatures and was just asking for some pointers. So this was kind of my video tutorial of this is how I would paint it if I were to paint one. And if you like what you see, then cool, you can use it on your own mini. If you don't, that's okay too. Because not everyone's styles need to look the same. The model looks really cool. I think so too. Twin Goddess Miniatures does a really good job. And while they're not necessarily my style, because I don't want to call it horny because it ain't a horny model, but I generally don't paint models that are more. Gosh, I don't know how to say this without sounding bad. I don't want to come across like I'm being prudish about it or anything. But I don't tend to do models that are more male gazy. Because she's clearly designed with an intent, and it's not necessarily bad, but it's just not a style that I would normally paint. And I'm having a lot of fun painting this because it's so different to what I would normally paint, you know? Okay, we're going to do some of the bold titanium white solely as kind of like a highlight color. So I'm going to use the flat of the brush so that it only hits the raised edges. And what that's going to do is, especially since I did such a rough dry brush, it's going to clearly re-separate all of the different ridges on the metal. And so that way you have a clear idea. That model is based on existing art, like 3D fan art of a 2D artist. That's really cool. I'll have to look it up. But same thing. I'm using this very bright white as a highlight. It's not meant to be... it's not meant to kind of take over the model in the same way that any of the brightest highlights are meant to take over a model. I'm just trying to draw focus to specific parts of the model that have been painted to show that that is where light is hitting it the hardest. And I'm actually going to do just a little bit more streaking on the flats of the blade to show where potentially the light would hit their hardest. And there we go. A bunch of Twin Goddess free models are 3D fan art. Yeah, that makes sense. I know that they have like the Mall Wizard, which is another one that I've printed, or I mean I've saved, I haven't printed it yet. Okay, next, I kind of want to get the eyes done, because the eyes are starting to bug me that they're not done. I'm going to actually go ahead and hit the underside of the pigtails, because I thought I did and I did not, and that's bugging me as well. Okay, that should be good. Okay, next is going to be the eyes, and eyes are always a problem. If you do not have problem painting eyes, then you're either just incredibly good or you're lying to me. What I'm going to do... And this is another one where angle is important, because if I try and do this the wrong way, it's going to smudge on her cheeks and on her eyebrows. So you've really got to be careful with where you're painting the eyes. And once again, given how not tight the point is on this brush, I got very, very lucky. Slip Up gave you an idea and it looks solid. That is always the best. When you're like, man, I messed this up, how can I fix it? And then you realize that fixing it has made the model better in some way because you played with the mistake rather than completely rejecting it. Okay, so I actually started with the light gray for the eyes because halfway done, congratulations. Because most eyes are never just pure white. They always have at least a little bit of darkness to them. So I started there, and now I'm going to start adding in just a smidgen of white to see how that looks and see if I like it or not. It's fine. It'll do, I suppose. But man, is this difficult. It's one of those things where I really don't want to mess up. The biggest issue now is going to be placing the irises, because I'm always not very good at that. And the last thing you want to do is make them look like they're insane, or make them look like they're wall-eyed. So let's hope this turns out okay, guys. Actually, wait a minute. Yeah, that's enough moisture. Okay, that one turned out okay. That one ended up being a little bigger than I wanted, but I can play with that. I wonder now... Yeah, that left, or that right one ended up being way too far over. But yeah, see, this is where having a really good sharp tip is helpful, because otherwise you end up having inconsistencies like this. So I'm going to try and paint back over. There we go. I'm going to try and get rid of as much of the moisture on the brush as possible, and and go back to the dark blue because I don't really want to use a black for this. And now I'm going to try again. Much better. Still not great, still not perfect, but at least it matches her other eye a little bit better. I don't know, guys. What do you think? How'd I do? How does it look? Okay. A little bit more life into those eyebrows. See, again, this is where I've got to be really careful, because if you don't do it correctly, you start having the issues. Huzzah, huzzah, huzzah. Working with borrowed equipment apparently is a good way to learn if it's for you. Yep, exactly. Not spending a ton of money on equipment that you might never use again is always a great feeling. Okay, next, we go ahead and add some more of the white into the dark blue. And I am going to see what I can do about highlighting without messing this up too badly. So we're starting to get into that final stretch of, like, can Ben Repaints pull this off and have it all still look okay? And unfortunately, hair is another one of those things I don't get to work on a whole lot because this is way too bright. Because most of the models I paint are like Spec Marines and stuff. So I don't get to work a whole lot with more organic things like hair and skin very often. So that is what I'm going to be playing with as I continue trying to work with this. And so what's most likely going to happen is I'm going to futz around with it for a while, realize I don't like how it looks, throw a wash on it and call it a day. Because washes tend to unify colors a bit and give them a little bit more of some consistency, I guess I'll call it. But we're going to see what I can do here. And kind of the same thing as I've been doing. My main goal is all the spots where the light would hit it the most, that's where I'm going to try and highlight it. And we'll see how this ends up looking. Right now, I'm just trying to get some color, transitionary colors, on a lot of the parts of the hair that I feel like need to be seen. Okay, let's see what we can do here for this stuff. This is where it gets a little dicey because the hair is starting to blend in more with the scalp. Okay. A little bit over here, a little bit over there. That definitely added some dimension to it, but it looks pretty sloppy. Which is fine. What always gets me about doing this kind of work is seeing how it's even with a limited palette, because I think I have like 20 some odd colors total. I still managed to get a decent amount of variance between the models and the colors on the models. Right now, I've just been using the same 3 colors for everything involving like what would have been just a typical black tone. So right now I'm actually, this is just that same dark blue, titanium white, and dark gray. That's all I've really used. And so far, it's turned out pretty good. Now my goal here again is to have smaller highlights than what I did previously, because they came out very chunky, since I'm both unsure of what I'm doing and I want to be able to concentrate back to a brighter spot. And what that actually just ended up allowing me to do is create some unintentional depth in the hair, since there's now more colors and more texture coming out of the hair. So all in all, it ended up working out really well for me. Now again, this is purely if you want to have a more dynamic looking paint scheme compared to what you would do if you were just blocking everything in. Let's add some more variance here. Let's go ahead and start some glazing because I don't like how this just kind of ends. So we're going to go ahead and glaze back over with a very thin layer, a very watery layer of that dark blue. And we'll knock everything back down, hopefully, just a smidgen. Yep, accidental wins are the best. But again, it's one of those things, right, where if you don't have the mindset to play around with it, you'll never get to those accidental wins. And I feel like that's something I want to emphasize every time, is like, it is cool when things work out because you planned them that way, because it's validating to show that your experience and your judgment is good. But it's just as good when you're able to kind of finagle and putter your way into a win, because you allowed your mind to be open enough to work the problem out, right? That in itself is also very validating. So yeah, never be afraid to experiment. The worst that you'll have to do is paint it again. And paint over it, which is a perfectly fine thing. Like right now, I'm not very fond of how these streaks look, because they feel very, very bright compared to what I just did, but that's okay. I'm going to add some water, and I'm going to really glaze it back out, and hopefully that'll dull it back down and shade it to the color of the rest of the hair. And if that doesn't work, I'll paint back over it. Since you work with Citadel paints, I'm starting with Stormhost Silver. Should I watch for when it, anything I should watch for when you dry brush? Don't overload the brush with the metallic paint. I actually don't work with Citadel paints a lot. The only Citadel paint that I really regularly still use is Averland Sunset, and that's just because I really like it. I use Vallejo, and I'm slowly switching over to Pro Acryl, because I really like the consistency of Pro Acryl. Citadel paints are fine. There's nothing wrong with them. I just prefer the two that I've talked about. The biggest thing with metallics is don't rinse off the brush in the same paint cup that you do your other brushes, because the little pigment powder can really mess up your brush from constantly washing in it. But yeah, when you're doing metallics, especially with dry brushing, don't overload the brush, because they're just going to smear all over the place and not look that great. Yeah, I'm not super impressed with the hair. I feel like I'm second guessing myself too much with it. But that would be my advice when using metals in general, is really, really go ahead and reduce down the amount of paint on the brush as you're dry brushing it, to like take out a lot of the metal in the brush, because otherwise it's going to smear everywhere and look terrible. I actually recently did a project for October, and on my YouTube channel, if you want to go back, there's some VODs of that, and you can actually see the process of me dry brushing a metallic arm and a metallic leg and whatnot on an orc creature. And you can see some points where I overloaded the brush and some where I didn't, and you can see how different that looks in terms of how much paint is still on there for how it looks when you dry brush it on a mini. So that might be helpful for you. Also, when working metallics, when you use the same water cup, you always pick up metal flakes when working on the other paints. It'll have an effect like it's coated with glitter. Yeah, that's part of the problem too. Is if you don't necessarily want that. So generally, I tend to have a separate paint cup when I work with metallics. Okay. Last, I'm actually going to go ahead and use a pure black for the little pigtail ties, because I'm just going to go ahead and make those gray. Or at least work them up to a gray. But yeah, those are the big things with metallics. There's a couple ways to do them. You can either just slop them on and then use some Nuln oil and then dry brush them with like a silver, which works great. Or you can start with a black and dry brush on the metallic, and that way you've got some built-in shadows. And that's generally the way I do it. But that's purely a preference thing. I'm not even on screen. I have 2 IKEA plastic cups for your paint water, one for red for regular and blue for metallics. That's real smart. I have not done such a thing. Now I will say, going back to this mini really quickly, you can really see where my attention to detail fell off with the hair. Because if you like look at the hair and then you compare it to some of the other parts, you can see where I just kind of gave up on making it look clean. And that's just an example of where the devil is in the details. And when you start ignoring those details, it really starts showing in your final product. So I'm going to go back a little bit and touch up some of the spots where I'm noticing very clear issues, and seeing if that'll help clean it up a bit. Because it's nothing egregious, it's nothing terrible, it's not like I've ruined the model, but there's definitely spots where you can tell that I kind of gave up. Let's go ahead and get some of those spots. Hopefully that little bit of fading out will help with some of this. Like right now, I'm just trying to get rid of those very clear lines of like, he just painted a thick chunky line on this spot. When that happens to me, I usually let the model be and try and tackle the area for another day. Yeah, exactly, because it's a really good indicator that you've kind of worked to where your brain is like, you need to stop. And so that's usually the point where you probably should. Next is going to be some of the bold titanium white mixed in with the black to create a nice neutral gray. And now it's time to work some of the pigtail wraps. And we'll see how that looks. That's another thing. Unless you're on a deadline, which honestly you probably shouldn't have too many of if you're mini painting for your hobby, don't ever feel like you need to finish a mini on a specific day and that you can't just like put it down and come back to it later. Thank you for bringing that up, Darkbolt. But I feel like that's something important to consider that a lot of people don't, and they get really into this mindset of I've got to finish it and it's got to look good. Like, you really don't. A lot of people don't finish. I mean, it's like trying to say you got to finish reading a book in a day or something. It's there for your enjoyment and your entertainment. If you're not having fun with it anymore, then put it down and come back to it. Otherwise, you're just going to be stressed out by your hobby, and who wants to be stressed out by their hobby? You're doing this because you enjoy it, not because you have some, you know, burning need to get things done at a specific time. Speaking of, I'm sorry for the model wandering. Be focused in on trying to get some of this stuff done. And unfortunately, it's making my hands wander. Same thing kind of happened there. I went a little bit too wild and thick with some of these lines, so I'm going to work it back down. There we go. That's considerably better already. You forget to take breaks off, and so do I. It's happened before a couple times when I've been able to stream from home when I normally wouldn't. I get really kind of dialed in, and then I realized that I should probably go eat lunch. The last time I had a break, I think I stopped streaming. I think it was not election day. I think I stopped streaming at 12:30 because I was like, I need to go eat. But then I got really dialed in on some other part of the project, and I didn't end up eating until almost 2:45. So don't do that to yourself, guys. Be nice to your bodies. Stop when your body tells you you need to stop and get some nourishment. Especially because a reason why you might have that mental block is because your body is trying to tell you it's hungry. Just to provide some more separation between the hair bit and... Yeah, there we go. See if I can water that down a little bit more and drag it across, because some of those, again, they turned out just a smidge too bright, and I could do with knocking it back down a bit. That might be too much, but we'll find out. Okay, but yeah, for the most part, this lady is done. And honestly, I'm pretty happy with how, yeah, reward your body for taking care of itself. Exactly. Pretty happy with how that turned out, because that was it looks like 2.5 hours of time from start to finish, and all things considered, it looks pretty darn good. It looks pretty darn good. I might go back and touch up the hair a little later. Who knows? But yeah, that's how I do it, and that's how I kind of work on my models. Oh, I didn't do the socks. That's okay. They'll be fine as dark blue for now. But yeah, Shiny View Paints, if you're watching this, I hope this was informative, and it didn't drag too much, but that's kind of how I get my models to look the way I do. And since this one was so small, I had the benefit of being able to work on it the entire way through. There's clearly some touch-ups. I could touch up the rope a little bit in their wrist wraps. I could touch up the sockies. I could definitely touch up the hair. But it's also 11:37, and I've been streaming for 2.5 hours, so I think I'm going to stop and get some lunch, and then, I don't know, I might stream again. I might just vibe. It's a day off, so I should have fun with it. That being said, I'm going to go ahead and see if there's anyone we can raid. Anyone on the Twitch? No one that I know, but let's see what's going on with the miniatures and models sessions. Miniatures down, there's Old Man Ashville. Does anyone else have any recommendations? Because I will jump on pretty much anyone's stream. Unfortunately, it looks like there's not very many people streaming right now. Oh, thank you, Grumpy Knoll, for following. I appreciate it. Let's see who we got. Space Pirate Fenrir is off. We got the only two people I'm following are Pirate Software and Midnight Sumo, and both of them have plenty of followers. I don't think they need mine. Ooh. Let's see. Let's go ahead. Give me live channels. Give me feeds. Well, actually, it looks like Old Man Azrael is doing a Gundam kit. Wobbly Python I can recommend. Not a mini painter, but a streamer. Let's go! / raid. Wobbly Python. Cool. Thank you for the suggestion. I have no idea who they are, but I'm excited to help them out. Oh, it looks like they're playing Metal Gear Solid. Very cool. Okay, guys, thank you for being here. I appreciate it. I will see you later, probably tomorrow evening. Have a great rest of your day, and bye-bye.